we're all operating from. So we're going to start first with the broad overview. We'd like you to speak generally about why you want to be governor and how, as governor, you would work to expand economic opportunity to communities and families throughout the state.
I want to be governor because I want the Commonwealth of Mass to work better. And I want it to work better for the people who pay the bills, and especially for the people who depend on it, to do the work it's supposed to do every single day throughout the Commonwealth. I also want the Commonwealth to be a place where we spend time and effort reducing what I call the opportunity gap over the course of this race. Massachusetts is a great state. It's filled with great and wonderful people that I admire and have a tremendous amount of affection for. But there are definitely differences in this state, and they're defined by geography, by education, and in many cases, by industry. And where you live, to some extent, determines how you feel about how we're doing on those three issues. Now, we put together a pretty comprehensive economic development plan, a pretty comprehensive education reform plan, and a pretty comprehensive community development plan, and we did that in conjunction with many people who are working in and living in both areas that are succeeding and areas that need work. And a big part of the reason why we focused on developing this plan and then taking it and expanding it into an urban agenda that dealt with issues around economic development, education, affordable housing, incarceration, and criminal justice reform was because those are the areas I want to focus on as governor. And finally, I'm a big believer that an A plan with a D execution is a D plan. I've had an opportunity over this campaign to comment a number of times that I think about myself as kind of a weed whacker, and people always laugh when I say that. Feel free to laugh. But I'm a detail person. And I'm one of these people who thinks you got to get into the weeds if you really want to know what's going on in the ground. And I can tell you this, if I'm fortunate enough to get elected governor, you'll see me in a lot of places governors usually don't go. Not because I think any differently than others do about some of this stuff, but because I believe you need to see firsthand what's happening on the ground to really understand what's happening in any community across the Commonwealth. And I've been honored and thrilled to have the chance now to spend over a year crisscrossing this state from one end to the other, and it is truly a great state filled with wonderful people, and I would love to have an opportunity to work on your behalf and on behalf of the people you serve for the next 4 years. Thanks very much. Successful, I think in some ways we probably ought to think about expanding it and not just level funding it. We also talk quite a bit in our economic development plan about something we call mass building blocks, which is a series of initiatives that we would initiate as an administration to support and assist small businesses that work or want to work and develop opportunities along main streets, especially in our gateway cities. One of the great signs of success and health in any community is the quality of its main streets. And I spent a fair amount of time, is Nam Pham in here somewhere? In the front row. Nice job there, Nam. I spent a fair amount of time walking Fields Corner with Nam and talking to him about the work that Viet Aid and other folks in that community have done over the course of the past few years to basically rebuild and expand their Main Street, working in conjunction with the Main Street program in the city of Boston. And I think one of the ways we should all focus on not just small business, but on all business, and especially Main Street businesses, is by creating technical assistance, permitting development support, permitting simplification, regulatory improvements, and sort of guidance and assistance to small businesses that want to work in their communities to build out their main streets. Main streets, in many cases, are a real signal and a real sign about health and success in communities. And I want to work as governor with you and with others in your communities to build out those main streets, because I think that's a huge part of building out a neighborhood and a community. Housing. The answer to that is yes. The only only reason I'm not going to say yes to the first part is one of the things that is sort of not well understood about the Commonwealth's capital budget is when a governor builds that Commonwealth capital budget, they build it for 5 years, okay? It's not an annually appropriated budget because, as you know better than practically anybody, most projects that involve capital don't have a year in which they begin and end. They spread out over 4 or 5 years. So Governor Patrick's already made a series of commitments to the housing budget through the capital budget of the Commonwealth that runs through probably 2014, 15, or maybe even 2016. What I will say, so I don't know exactly how much he's currently got in the pipeline associated with housing and housing development. What I will say is we will not spend any less than the 190 that's already on the table, and depending upon what else he's already put forth as part of his capital budget, I can promise you this will be one of our priorities once we understand better what the commitments he's already made across the rest of his capital budget look like. But that's a hard question to answer without knowing exactly how Governor Patrick has laid out his 5-year capital plan and what his allocations are between and among transportation, economic development, housing, environmental affairs, and all the other categories that he's already made decisions on. What I will tell you is that this is going to be an important area for me, and it's going to be an important area for my administration, and it's a big part of what I would like to work with folks like Mayor Walsh on. Is Crystal around here somewhere? There you are. So there's a piece of land that's right across the street from Urban Edge that's owned by the Commonwealth of Mass, and it's a perfect development property. But it's a great example of a ton of developable property, much of which is located on transit lines and located on main streets all over the cities of Boston, Cambridge, Somerville, and the greater region that Marty talked about before. And by the way, that whole notion of trying to think about community building and economic development and a regional strategy, I am in with both feet on that one, Mr. Mayor. I talked to Joe Curtatone about this a few days ago when I went to see him, the mayor of Somerville. If the Commonwealth of Mass and a Baker administration can be a collaborator on that kind of an approach to community development and economic development, we would love to be in the Baker administration helpful on that. I think that is exactly the way we should be thinking about this stuff, and would love to have a chance to work with you and Mayor Curtatone and the other folks who make up what you refer to as kind of that ring around Boston. That's exactly the right way to think about this. But one of the things Crystal and I talked about was, how do you build affordable housing on some of these available lots? And from my point of view, the one thing the Commonwealth can control is the price of that land, okay? And my view is the right way to deal with that is to write a 20-year or 30-year ground lease on a very, very discounted basis to a local development group and basically say, we want to work with you to dramatically reduce the cost of the land that would be associated with building market rate affordable housing, work with the mayor and others to reduce the price associated with permitting, and see if we can't figure out a way to work together through organizations like Crystal's and others in this room to build more market rate affordable housing in those areas that young people, young families, working families can access. The Commonwealth has a ton of unused property. It's all over the place. A lot of it's located in great spots. And we are the one enterprise that would benefit dramatically from seeing that property develop without necessarily having to get a big bang on the land itself. And I think that's a huge opportunity, and the Baker administration would pursue it aggressively.
All right, we're going to move along quickly to the
I love this idea. I think we should double it in 15 and 16. Seriously, I mean, I love it. If I'm governor, I'm doubling it in 15 and 16. Okay? And then let's take it from there. And I'll promote it as well. I think it's a great idea, makes tons of sense. We should be all over it as a Commonwealth.
you took some time to sit down with the MACDC Board of Directors, and they hope that you found the discussion interesting and productive. The question, would you agree, should you win the election, to meet with the MACDC Board of Directors again during the first 100 days of your administration to have a discussion about how you can achieve shared goals?
Well, the answer to that is yes, but I would also say that I would want to meet on some sort of a regular basis to discuss what's going on, because as I said in my opening remarks, I think when I was Secretary of Health and Human Services and Secretary of Administration and Finance in the Wells-Lucci administrations, I went a lot of places that secretaries typically don't go. I mean, I talked to people all over our organization, and I talked to a lot of folks who actually had day-to-day interaction with Health and Human Services and with state government through the agencies that I worked for and represented. And I used to have my office hours once a month in communities where I would basically, I'd go visit a community health center, I'd go visit a social service agency, a church, some organization like that. If you had me on your calendar that day, you would have to come meet me there. I would have a lunch with the board of directors or folks from the community that people wanted to bring in and give an opportunity to talk to me about what was happening. I'm a big believer that I'm a trust but verify manager. I'll hire really great people. I will set the bar really high. I will expect them to perform. But they will all know that I will spend a lot of time walking around them and getting out and about and hearing what's really going on and learning whether or not what we are doing is actually working. I think one of the ways I would be able, as governor, to find out whether or not what we're doing is actually working is by having some sort of regular engagement with organizations like yours. So I'll not just commit to meet with you in the first 100 days, I'll commit to having some sort of regular ongoing conversation throughout the course of my administration, because that's going to be part of how I figure out if what we're doing at 80,000 feet is actually translating into success on the ground. Because if it's not translating to success on the ground, it doesn't matter how good it sounds at 80,000 feet. That's the kind of governor I'm going to be, and that's why I'm running for governor. Thank you very much.